Welcome back to Crime Documentary Files. In this video, we continue exploring two cases involving Asian individuals in the United States. The state of Virginia is located on the Atlantic coast in the eastern United States. In the northeastern part of the state lies a city of approximately 40,000 residents called Manassas. This city is home to a prominent Nepalese community, where traditional Nepalese events are regularly celebrated, and even a Nepalese language school has been established. This has attracted many Nepalese Americans to settle in the area. Today's story takes place here. Mamta Bhatt was a nurse living near Manassas. She was a vibrant, confident woman who frequently shared her life on social media, gaining a significant following. At the same time, she was a devoted 28-year-old mother to a lovely daughter. There isn't much information available about her childhood, but it is known that she grew up in a loving and supportive family. Her parents and brother always protected her and provided a strong educational foundation. From a young age, she was determined to excel and worked tirelessly to achieve that goal, consistently earning excellent academic results over the years. After completing her studies in Nepal, Mamta decided to pursue the American dream. Through immense effort, she became a registered nurse and started her nursing career at Innova Fairfax Hospital in Virginia. Later, she transferred to Prince William Medical Center, where she worked as a pediatric nurse. She loved her job, finding daily joy and fulfillment in caring for her patients. Beyond her successful career, she also found her prince charming. Her husband was a Nepalese man 5 years older than her. Bhatt was born in Mahendranagar, Nepal. Similar to Mamta, not much is publicly known about his early life, but we do know that he later moved to the U.S., where he graduated from a military academy. He served in Fairfax County, Virginia, and worked as an automated logistics technician in the U.S. Army Reserve. After dating for some time, they got married in December 2020 and settled in Manassas the following year. Mamta deeply loved her husband, and after their wedding, her social media was filled with photos of them together. From the joy radiating in those pictures, they appeared to be a truly happy couple. Shortly after getting married, Mamta became pregnant and gave birth to their beautiful baby girl, Nima, on August 20th, 2023. Both parents adored their daughter, but Mamta, in particular, was completely obsessed with showing her off. Her Facebook was filled with pictures of Nima, and even through a screen one could feel the warmth and happiness of their little family. However, no one could have predicted that a nightmare was about to unfold, shattering the seemingly perfect family. On August 1st, 2024, Mamta missed her final appointment with the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. It is important to note that this appointment was the last step in her journey to becoming a U.S. citizen, an incredibly significant event that she would never have willingly skipped. At the same time, Mamta's colleagues also sensed that something was wrong. She was always punctual, but suddenly she didn't show up for work, wasn't answering calls, and wasn't replying to messages. This was extremely unusual. Concerned for her safety, the hospital management decided to contact the police, hoping they would conduct a welfare check on Mamta. A welfare check is typically done to verify whether someone is safe and is often used for elderly individuals living alone, those with mental health conditions, or people who have been out of contact for an extended period. At 3:15 p.m. the following day, the police arrived at Mamta's home in Manassas Park. When they knocked on the door, they were met by her husband, Naresh, who was at home alone with their daughter. When questioned, Naresh stated that he had no idea about his wife's whereabouts because they had been having marital issues and were separated. He said the last time he saw Mamta was on the night of July 31st, and as far as he knew, she had traveled to New York or Texas to visit her sister. Naresh also mentioned that during an argument, he had smashed his phone, which was why he hadn't been able to contact his wife. Through security cameras and Naresh's demeanor, the police didn't notice anything particularly suspicious. Furthermore, Naresh told them that this wasn't the first time Mamta had suddenly disappeared. He claimed that she had gone missing 3 times before without explanation, but had always returned home a few days later. For the next 2 days, Naresh fully cooperated with the police. However, things took a strange turn when detectives discovered that Mamta did not have a sister in New York or Texas. In fact, Her entire family lived in Nepal, and she had no other relatives in the US. So, was Naresh lying? Days passed, but Mamta was still nowhere to be found. Her social media accounts remained inactive, and investigators could not uncover any leads about her whereabouts. Her friends and colleagues grew increasingly worried, convinced that something terrible had happened to her. On August 5th, the police officially classified Mamta as a missing person. 3 days later, they publicly released a missing persons report, hoping the community could provide information. Naresh also posted a missing persons notice on Facebook. At this point, most people would immediately suspect the husband. After all, in cases involving a missing spouse, the partner is always the first person of interest. Additionally, Naresh had already admitted that they were separated, and some of the information he provided was inconsistent. Furthermore, as Mamta's husband, it was highly unusual that he didn't report her missing for several days and only posted about it 8 days later. Any concerned spouse would have reported it much sooner. Of course, the police considered all of this and promptly brought Naresh in for questioning. However, his statement remained unchanged. He insisted that the last time he saw Mamta was on the night of July 31st. Additionally, he claimed that her green card, passport, and some luggage were missing, implying that she had left voluntarily. Naresh even went to the media, urging the community and police to help find his wife, hoping she would return. Does this sound familiar? It closely resembles the infamous Watts family case that once shocked the US. However, there was one key difference. Naresh despised media attention and was reluctant to give interviews. Mamta's friends and colleagues organized a large gathering to pray for her safety. They also created missing person flyers, posting them all over the area, while actively spreading the word online with numerous social media posts. As Mamta's case gained traction, major news outlets began covering her disappearance extensively. TV personality Nancy Grace, along with several organizations, offered a $5,000 reward for anyone who could provide a crucial lead. To expand the search efforts, Mamta's friends also actively crowdfunded more than $19,000, with all the funds dedicated to the search for Mamta. However, despite the extensive search efforts, there were still no leads on Mamta's whereabouts. As time passed, everyone who cared about her became increasingly anxious. The longer a person remains missing, the lower their chances of survival. In the blink of an eye, it was August 20th, Nima's first birthday. Naresh hosted a birthday party at their home, inviting many friends and colleagues. The house was beautifully decorated, but he strictly forbade anyone from taking photos. Guests later described the atmosphere as incredibly strange and uncomfortable. Imagine this scene. A child's mother is missing. Friends are desperately searching for her, yet her husband is throwing a party as if nothing happened. The birthday celebration only reinforced the harsh reality. Something terrible had happened to Mamta. After all, she adored her daughter and would never willingly miss such an important milestone. As one of Mamta's former colleagues put it, anyone who knows her will tell you, she was a sweet, kind mother who adored her child. There's no way she would miss her daughter's birthday. Mamta's former teacher also spoke to police, emphasizing how much she loved life, cooking, and music. She was a devoted mother who cherished her daughter above all else and would never abandon her. The teacher also provided a crucial clue. Back in February of this year, she noticed visible injuries on Mamta's face when she came to work. When asked, Mamta admitted that she and her husband had been having problems and were trying a trial separation. At the time, her teacher urged her to leave and even offered her a place to stay or suggested seeking government assistance. However, Mamta refused and replied, "I'm going to seek family counseling. I want to give him another chance because I realize how much I love him. I want to give him a chance to be a better husband and father." Later, Mamta also reached out to a local support group for single mothers seeking help. At the time, she sent them a concerning message. "If I leave my daughter with him, he will send her to foster care. Can this really happen?" All these clues pointed to one thing. The happy pictures on social media were just a facade. In reality, Mamta and Naresh's relationship had been broken for a long time, and there were deep conflicts between them. Naturally, suspicion toward Naresh continued to grow. On August 21st, police obtained a search warrant and conducted a thorough search of Naresh's home. Forensic experts worked meticulously, staying overnight when they couldn't finish in a single day. They left no stone unturned, ensuring every possible clue was examined. Although police did not disclose many details about the search, they did confirm some chilling findings. At first glance, the bathroom and master bedroom appeared normal. However, after using luminol, forensic investigators discovered traces of blood and drag marks leading from the bedroom to the bathroom. Additionally, the bathtub was once covered in bloodstains. When DNA analysis was conducted on the remaining blood traces, the results confirmed. The blood belonged to Mamta. Manassas Park Police Chief Mario immediately held a press conference. Given the large amount of blood found and the fact that Mamta had been missing for over 20 days, police officially concluded that she had been murdered. The primary and only suspect was Naresh. On August 22nd, police officially arrested Naresh on charges of concealing a body, while their 1-year-old daughter was placed under Child Protective Services. Some of you may wonder, why wasn't he charged with murder immediately? This is because concealing a body is an easier charge to prosecute. It is often used when police lack direct evidence to prove a homicide or that the suspect was directly involved. By charging Naresh with body concealment, law enforcement could keep him in custody, push the case into the judicial system, and buy more time for further investigation. After Naresh's arrest, police intensified their investigation, conducting a second search of his home and analyzing data from his phone and computer. Through their findings, they discovered that after Mamta's disappearance, Naresh first sold his Tesla, then began the process of selling their house. Many of their household belongings had already been packed, and he was even preparing to send their daughter to Nepal. There were clear signs that he was planning to flee. As a result, during his bail hearing on August 26th, the judge had no hesitation in declaring Naresh a severe flight risk and a significant danger to the community, denying him bail. Police analyzed Mamta's last phone call with her mother on July 29th. Given Mamta's habit of speaking with her mother daily, they estimated her time of death to be sometime between July 29th to 30th. With modern surveillance networks and GPS tracking, it wasn't difficult to reconstruct Naresh's movements around this time frame. Here's a breakdown of his suspicious activities. July 30th at 4:30 a.m., Naresh searched nearest chicken farm on Google Maps. 5:40 a.m., he contacted the babysitter. 6:30 a.m., dropped off his daughter at the babysitter's home in Clark Square, Manassas. 6:40 a.m., security camera footage captured him disposing of several trash bags in an apartment complex dumpster. 8:12 a.m., went to Gatehard, a local store near his house, and purchased rubber gloves. 8:21 a.m., spotted at Walmart, where security footage showed him purchasing 3 knives, carpet cleaner, deodorizing spray, and wet wipes. 5:22 p.m., returned to Gatehard to purchase 40 heavy-duty trash bags. July 31st at 1:30 a.m., Tesla vehicle data showed he drove 25 miles to Falls Church, where he was seen disposing of multiple trash bags in a trash compactor. 5:30 p.m., disposed of more trash bags in the dumpster near the babysitter's house. 7 p.m., picked up his daughter and returned home. On July 31st, between 11 a.m. and midnight, his house used over 150 gallons of water, far more than normal household consumption. On August 1st, after keeping his phone turned off for a long period, Naresh's phone signal reappeared in Loudoun County. Surveillance footage showed him stuffing a large package into a clothing donation bin. When police later retrieved the package, they found clothing stained with blood. On August 2nd, just before police arrived for the welfare check, Naresh asked his tenant to help him move the bed in his bedroom. This is Naresh's complete timeline after Mamta went missing. I think even if you're not a detective, it's pretty obvious what happened. The evidence is glaringly clear. Police even discovered 2 incriminating search queries on Naresh's browser history from before Mamta's disappearance. How soon after a wife's death can you remarry? How are debts handled after a wife's death? Investigators had every reason to suspect that Naresh was involved with someone else and had planned to get rid of Mamta in advance. Otherwise, why would he be looking up something like, "How soon after my wife dies can I remarry?" At this point, police had a clear motive, a probable timeline of the crime, and a detailed account of his attempt to cover it up. The suspect was in custody, and it seemed like the case was coming together. However, there was one major missing piece, the most crucial piece of evidence. Mamta's body was still missing. While there have been cases where suspects were successfully convicted without a body, prosecuting a murder without a corpse always carries significant risks. What if they couldn't convict Naresh? Moreover, even if police could prove a homicide occurred without a body, they would at least need biological evidence such as tissue, hair, or a murder weapon. Without these, the case would be much harder to prosecute. Based on the investigation, it was clear that Mamta's body had been discarded in the trash. The problem was finding it. By the time police began a large-scale landfill search, a full week had passed since Naresh had disposed of the garbage. While this wasn't an extremely long delay, the amount of daily waste processed in the city was enormous. Making things worse, Naresh had dumped trash in multiple locations, significantly complicating the search effort. Despite extensive efforts, investigators struggled to make progress, a major frustration for the police. Naresh's defense worked aggressively to discredit the investigation. His attorneys filed a Franks motion, a legal challenge questioning the validity of the search warrant. A Franks motion is used to challenge whether police intentionally provided false or misleading information in a sworn affidavit when obtaining a search warrant. If proven, it could invalidate the warrant and any evidence obtained from it. Naresh's lawyers claimed that officers made false statements when requesting a search, and even accused one officer of lying to obtain Naresh's arrest warrant. The officer in question initially stated, "We have evidence that Mamta's body was dragged outside the house." However, this was later proven inaccurate. The officer corrected his statement, explaining that he had misspoken, and that what he meant to say was, "Blood evidence suggests that Mamta's body was dragged from the bedroom to the bathroom." Naresh's attorneys argued that if both the arrest and search warrants were based on misleading information, then the warrants should be deemed invalid and Naresh should be released from custody. Additionally, neighbors reported something strange. Between July 29th and 30th, Mamta's home was completely silent. According to them, they heard no screams, no fighting, and no signs of a struggle. This contradicted what one might expect in a violent crime. If Mamta had been attacked, wouldn't there have been a loud fight or a struggle? Furthermore, when Naresh was arrested, police found no injuries or scratches on his body, raising even more questions about what had actually happened. Although Naresh's attorneys presented multiple arguments for his release on bail, they ultimately failed. During the second bail hearing on September 20th, the judge once again ruled that the overwhelming evidence indicated that Naresh was a flight risk and a danger to the community, leading to another denial of bail. Moreover, with the discovery of additional evidence, the case took a decisive turn. Forensic investigators found traces of human tissue on an automatic chainsaw at Naresh's home. DNA analysis confirmed a match with Mamta's hair, with a statistical probability of it belonging to someone else being less than 1 in 800,000. At this point, Naresh was no longer just facing charges of concealing a body. He was now formally charged with first-degree murder and evidence tampering. These charges would be prosecuted simultaneously. Naresh's trial date was set for December 9th. While details about the trial proceedings have not yet been released, the fact that police had executed 40 search warrants, all meticulously carried out, strongly suggests that they have ample evidence. It is now only a matter of time before Naresh is convicted. Escape is no longer an option. Meanwhile, Mamta's family in Nepal was devastated. Unable to eat or sleep in peace, her mother Geeta and brother rushed to the U.S. on August 29th after receiving emergency visas. When Geeta learned that Mamta had likely been murdered, she broke down in grief, saying, "My daughter was a kind, hard-working person. There was no one like her in our community. I will always remember her as someone with a good heart. She was like my own heart, and now it is broken." What's even more heartbreaking is that Nima, barely 1 year old, will now grow up without either of her parents. She lost her mother to violence and her father to his own crime before she was even old enough to understand what happened. To support this innocent child, the local community spontaneously organized a fundraiser. In just 24 hours, donations surpassed $80,000. As of today, the total amount raised has exceeded $240,000. Every penny will be placed into a trust fund for Nima, ensuring her future financial security. There is a strong possibility that she will return to Nepal to be raised by her grandmother. We can only hope that she grows up safe, healthy, and surrounded by love. Now let's discuss a question many people may have. How do prosecutors handle murder cases when the victim's body is never found? Historically, these cases posed significant challenges in criminal justice. Without a body, there was often insufficient evidence to even press charges, let alone secure a conviction. As a result, many killers walked free, escaping punishment due to the lack of direct physical proof. However, with rapid advancements in technology, the landscape has changed dramatically. Today, forensic tools like DNA testing, phone record tracking, and the widespread presence of security cameras provide groundbreaking new forms of evidence. These tools allow prosecutors to reconstruct crimes in ways never before possible, overcoming the traditional reliance on a body as the key piece of evidence. Former federal prosecutor Tad DiBiase has extensively studied and documented no-body murder cases. According to his data, as of September 2, 2024, the United States has successfully prosecuted 604 such cases, with an 87% conviction rate. With the continued advancement of forensic technology, this conviction rate is expected to rise even further. So, for anyone hoping to get away with murder just because there's no body, think again. As the famous Locard's exchange principle states, every contact leaves a trace. Since this case is still ongoing, I will continue monitoring the developments and posting updates in the comments section of this video. Make sure to follow along. Now let's move on to the second gripping case in this episode. The case took place in Seongnam, South Korea. The main figure in this story is Kim Myung-chul, a 32-year-old 6 feet 1 inch former basketball player. After retiring from professional sports, he transitioned into a career as a corporate event host, specializing in team-building activities and energizing crowds. His fiancée, Lee Hyun-ju, worked in the insurance industry. The two had already set a wedding date, and their wedding preparations were in full swing. It was the afternoon of June 12, 2010. That evening, Myung-chul and Hyun-ju had planned to watch a World Cup match at home. However, just before kickoff, Myung-chul suddenly told Hyun-ju that he had an urgent matter to attend to. He needed to meet a friend, Lee Kwang-hwee. Hyun-ju knew Kwang-hwee, who had mentioned a major business opportunity for Myung-chul to invest in. Since she was familiar with Kwang-hwee, Hyun-ju didn't ask many questions. Before leaving, Myung-chul even borrowed Hyun-ju's high-limit credit card, saying he needed it to entertain clients. Hyun-ju assumed he would be back within an hour. But as time passed, from dinner time to the start of the match at 8:30 p.m., he still hadn't returned. She called his phone, but no one answered. This was extremely unusual. Even when using the restroom, Myung-chul would still respond to her texts. But that night, he wasn't picking up a single call. At 11 p.m., Hyun-ju finally received a text from him. But when she opened it, she was shocked by what it said. "Let's break up. I found out about your past from your friends and I can't accept it. I've decided to be with someone else. Don't contact me again." Hyun-ju couldn't believe her eyes. She immediately called him back, but instead of hearing his voice, a cold female voice answered, "Your boyfriend is sick of you. Stop bothering him. We're leaving together." Completely bewildered, Hyun-ju immediately called Kwang-hwee, the friend who had set up the business meeting, to find out what had happened that evening. When Kwang-hwee picked up, he responded calmly, "Nothing special happened tonight. We had a great conversation. Mr. Choi, the event organizer, even gave Myung-chul a 30 million won deposit on the spot." Kwang-hwee then added another shocking detail. After their business meeting, Myung-chul said he needed cash urgently and used his car as collateral to take out a 25 million won loan. Hearing Kwang Hui's explanation only made Hyun-ju more confused. She knew Myung-chul's financial situation well. He had no recent need for a loan, so why did he suddenly need a large sum of money? And why would he go as far as putting his car up as collateral? Feeling uneasy, Hyun-ju reached out to Myung-chul's family, only to discover that they hadn't been able to contact him either. Then, the next morning, his mother received a text from him. "Mom, I'm sorry. Something happened, and I won't be able to come home for now. I truly apologize for not telling you in advance. Because of my fiancé, I ended up in serious debt. If anyone asks, please tell them I've temporarily gone abroad. Once everything is settled, I will come back to find you. I'm sorry. I never thought things would turn out like this." Even more strangely, Kwang Hui, the friend who had introduced the business opportunity to Myung-chul, also received a similar message. In the text, Myung-chul asked Kwang Hui not to report to the police and promised to repay his loan as soon as possible. Both Lee Hyun-ju and Kim Myung-chul's family immediately felt that the tone of these messages did not match his usual way of speaking at all. After discussing with his family, Hyun-ju decided to report the case to the police. However, the police response was disappointing. After reviewing the situation, authorities concluded that this was a voluntary disappearance. They suspected that Myung-chul was in hiding due to debt issues, deliberately avoiding contact. Because of this assumption, police did not open an official investigation at the time. Despite the police insisting that Myung-chul had simply gone into hiding, Hyun-ju's intuition told her otherwise. She knew that he would never run away from his responsibilities, and he certainly wouldn't have disappeared in this way. Determined to find answers, she began retracing the events of that day. The more she thought about it, the more suspicious details she noticed. First, she remembered that when Myung-chul left the house, he brought his personal seal and his family register. These are only carried when signing important contracts or handling official matters. However, the meeting that day was supposed to be a preliminary discussion, with no mention of contract signing. Additionally, as previously mentioned, Myung-chul had borrowed Hyun-ju's high-limit credit card, saying he might need it to entertain clients. In reality, at 5:40 p.m. that day, a 1 million won withdrawal was made using the card. At the same time, Myung-chul called Hyun-ju, asking for her credit card PIN while claiming that he was at the bank. Surveillance footage from the bank confirmed that he was indeed there. At the time, everything seemed normal, so Hyun-ju didn't think much of it. But looking back, this transaction now seemed to be closely linked to his disappearance. What puzzled Hyun-ju the most was the fact that Myung-chul insisted on driving that day. He knew the meeting location was only a 7 to 8 minute walk away. He also knew that the meeting might involve drinking alcohol, making it unwise to drive. Yet despite this, he still chose to take his car. This was completely out of character for him, as he was usually very cautious. Could it be that he had already planned to use his car as collateral before he even left home? 22 days after Myung-chul's disappearance, the case took a major turn. Mr. Choi, the person who had supposedly discussed a business deal with Myung-chul, unexpectedly turned himself in at the police station. The first thing he said upon arriving was, "I'm not Mr. Choi. I'm just a food delivery worker." This unexpected confession completely changed the nature of the case. Choi then revealed the truth. He and Kwang Hui had been old friends. About 3 weeks earlier, while making a food delivery, he accidentally ran into Kwang Hui. Without hesitation, Kwang Hui immediately asked, "Are you free? Can you help me with something?" At the time, Choi didn't think much of it. Since they had known each other for years and were former friends, he agreed to help. Later, Kwang Hui invited him to a private entertainment venue where he gave him a new identity, Mr. Choi. He told Choi that the name was just for work purposes and had no special meaning. Lee Kwang Hui then handed Choi a packet of sleeping pills, instructing him to dissolve them into a drink while ensuring there were no visible traces when stirred. He told Choi that a special guest would be arriving, and his job was to serve the drugged drink and engage the person in conversation about business matters to encourage them to consume it without suspicion. As a reward, Kwang Hui also slipped him a wad of cash. Although Choi felt uneasy, he ultimately went along with the plan. Not long after, Myung-chul walked into the room. Everything went according to plan. Myung-chul did not seem to suspect anything, and within 10 minutes, the drugs took effect, causing him to lose consciousness. Choi stood frozen in shock, but Kwang-hui remained ice-cold, simply saying, "Help me carry him." Following Kwang-hui's instructions, they lifted the unconscious Myung-chul and placed him into a vehicle before driving to an office space that Kwang-hui had recently rented. Once they arrived, Kwang-hui dismissed Choi, saying, "All right, you can go now." Choi was about to leave, but after walking a short distance, he suddenly realized he had left his phone inside the office. He decided to go back to retrieve it. When he knocked on the door, Kwang-hui's voice came through, cold and irritated. "Why are you back?" Choi hurriedly explained that he had forgotten his phone inside. Kwang-hui seemed reluctant to engage and, in an annoyed tone, responded, "I'll return it to you later. Just leave me alone." This strange behavior sent a wave of unease through Choi. He began to suspect that he had been dragged into something far more sinister than he initially thought. After carefully considering his options, Choi made the bold decision to go to the police station and confess everything he knew. Based on Choi's testimony, police quickly realized that this case was far more complex than they had initially assumed. They immediately launched a full-scale investigation, with the first step being to summon Kwang-hui for questioning. When confronted by investigators, Kwang-hui stuck to his original story, repeating the same explanation he had given to Hyun-ju. He claimed that Mr. Choi, the corporate event organizer, had paid Myung-chul a 30 million won deposit. Later, Myung-chul allegedly used his car as collateral to borrow another 25 million won from him. In total, 55 million won was exchanged, and Myung-chul then left on his own. He insisted that everything was legal, reasonable, and above board, denying any wrongdoing. However, police quickly uncovered major inconsistencies in his claims. 1. According to Myung-chul's colleagues and fiancé, he had no financial troubles and no reason to take out a loan. 2. The car Myung-chul used as collateral was an old vehicle, with a market value of less than 10 million won. How could such a low-value car be used to secure a 25 million won loan? No legitimate lender would ever agree to such a bad deal. 3. The alleged 30 million won deposit made no sense. Why would an ordinary event hosting job require such an enormous deposit? The figure was completely unreasonable for the nature of the work. When police pressed Kwang-hui further, he suddenly flipped his attitude, acting as though he were the victim. In the interrogation room, he shouted angrily, "Why are you investigating me? I'm the one who's been scammed. I loaned him money and now he's disappeared. You should be helping me find him." His defensive and aggressive demeanor only made police even more suspicious. Seeing that Kwang-hui refused to confess, police confronted him with Choi's testimony, stating that Choi had already told them everything and that there was no such person as Mr. Choi. The moment Kwang-hui realized that Choi had turned himself in, he changed his story. He admitted that he had taken Myung-chul to the office, but claimed that after leaving him there, he had no idea what happened next. Since Kwang-hui was still uncooperative, police decided to search the office. Upon arriving, investigators found that the entire office had been completely emptied. But what stood out was the floor, which was soaked as if it had been thoroughly washed. Police then used luminol, a chemical that detects blood traces, and discovered small bloodstains on the wall. On the floor, they also found several suspicious strands of hair. DNA analysis confirmed that both the blood and the hair matched Myung-chul's DNA. Quickly, police uncovered another crucial clue at the crime scene. One large section of the office wall had recently been repainted, clearly an attempt to cover something up. When investigators applied luminol to the repainted area, they discovered more blood spatter patterns, a type of blood distribution typically caused by an object or arm swinging after coming into contact with blood. Further investigation revealed that Kwang-hui had rented this office just 1 week before the incident. According to the real estate agent, Kwang-hui had made some unusual requests when choosing a rental space. 1. He specifically wanted an office in a very noisy area. 2. The office needed to have an excellent water supply. In the end, he selected this particular office, which was located in a bustling district surrounded by dance studios, late-night restaurants, and bars, a noisy environment with abundant access to water. These odd requirements immediately raised police suspicions. Next, police examined the office's water bill, and what they found was shocking. In June, the office had consumed 49 metric tons of water, over 40 metric tons, 10,500 gallons, more than normal usage. Police suspected that this excessive water consumption had been used to clean up blood and destroy evidence. A neighbor from the floor below also reported something suspicious. They noticed that water had leaked down into their unit, and when they asked Kwang Hui about it, he brushed it off, saying, "There was a dead rat in the office. I had to use a lot of water to clean up the smell." The neighbor found this explanation questionable. After all, why would cleaning up a single dead rat require such an excessive amount of water? Despite all this overwhelming evidence, Kwang Hui continued to deny any wrongdoing. He defiantly defended himself, saying, "My office was dirty, so I cleaned it. What's wrong with that?" However, when police presented the blood test results, he changed his story again. This time, he admitted that he and Myung-chul had a physical altercation in the office, according to Kwang Hui's revised version of events. After regaining consciousness, Myung-chul accused Kwang Hui of having an affair with his fiancée, Hyun-ju. This led to an argument, which then escalated into a physical fight. During the altercation, Myung-chul became agitated and slammed his head against the wall, which was how blood ended up on the walls and floor. After being restrained, Myung-chul allegedly stood up and walked out of the office on his own. However, police weren't buying his story, especially given the amount of blood found at the scene. However, police did not believe this version of events. Based on the evidence collected, they suspected that Myung-chul had been murdered, but the key questions remained. Where was his body hidden? And if Kwang Hui had indeed killed Myung-chul, what was his motive? From the ongoing investigation, there appeared to be no clear financial motive or personal vendetta. However, when police dug deeper, they discovered a significant connection. Kwang Hui and Myung-chul's fiancé, Lee Hyun-ju, had known each other since 2001, meaning they had a history spanning 9 years before the crime took place. Their relationship was not just a casual friendship. Kwang Hui had frequently taken her to upscale restaurants and given her expensive gifts. In fact, Myung-chul only met Kwang Hui through Hyun-ju's introduction. By 2010, everything changed. When Kwang Hui found out that the woman he had admired for years had chosen Myung-chul and that they had even decided to marry after only a few months of dating, police theorized that this news shattered Kwang Hui's delusion of being with her. His anger and jealousy may have become the catalyst for what followed, leading him to meticulously plan everything. Eventually, the case went to trial. In court, Kwang Hui did not deny that he had detained and assaulted Myung-chul, but he continued to insist that he had not killed him. During the first trial, prosecutors argued that Myung-chul was dead and demanded that Kwang Hui receive the maximum possible sentence. However, due to the lack of conclusive evidence proving death, the case could not be legally classified as a homicide. The court ruling stated, while there was a significant amount of circumstantial evidence, it was not enough to confirm Myung-chul's death. Although bloodstains were found at the crime scene, the small quantity of blood only proved a struggle, but did not confirm a fatal injury. Furthermore, since no body was found, there was no autopsy report, meaning that the cause of death could not be determined. While Choi testified against Kwang Hui, he had left the office after delivering Myung-chul and had no knowledge of what happened afterward. Due to the lack of key witnesses and direct evidence, prosecutors' arguments remained speculative. The situation became even more challenging. If prosecutors rushed to charge Kwang Hui with murder without sufficient evidence, there was a risk that he could be acquitted. And under the double jeopardy principle, if he were found not guilty, even if new evidence surfaced later, he could not be retried for the same crime. Because of this, prosecutors were forced to adopt a more cautious strategy. They dropped the murder charge and instead focused on illegal confinement and violent assault. Based on the available evidence, the court sentenced Kwang Hui to 15 years in prison. However, he was dissatisfied with the ruling and appealed to the Supreme Court. Eventually, his sentence was reduced to 7 years. As for Choi, who had participated in the deception, he was convicted of fraud-related charges and sentenced to 1 year in prison. One unanswered question remained. Who was the mysterious woman who used Myung-chul's phone to talk to Hyunju? Despite an extensive investigation, police found no trace of her. To this day, her identity remains unknown. However, the case was far from over. During the investigation into Myung-chul's disappearance, police received a report from an insurance company regarding a 1.7 billion won insurance fraud case. What caught investigators' attention was that the key figure in this case had close ties to Kwang Hui. In 2009, a man named Park Byung-jun was found dead in his bathroom, completely naked. Shortly before his death, he had purchased a high-value insurance policy, naming the primary beneficiary as Lee Junam, Kwang Hui's twin brother. Due to multiple suspicious circumstances surrounding Park's death, the insurance company delayed the payout. However, it wasn't until a year later, when Myung-chul's disappearance came to light, that the insurance company realized a disturbing connection. The suspect in both cases was closely linked to Lee Kwang Hui. As a result, they reported their findings to the police. Looking into the twins' past, police uncovered a long history of criminal activity. In 1993, when they were still teenagers, they were caught stealing a skateboard. When Junam was arrested, Kwang Hui attacked a witness with a knife, resulting in one person's death. However, the case was ruled as manslaughter, as police concluded that there was no premeditated intent to kill. Despite carrying a weapon, Kwang Hui received a lenient sentence because of their young age at the time. As adults, the twins specialized in staging fake car accidents, working with fake victims to scam insurance companies for compensation payouts. While each scam only brought in a modest amount, over time, the total sum became quite substantial. Now, let's examine the fraud case involving Park Byung-jun. At 4:30 a.m. on May 20th, 2009, 28-year-old Park was found dead in his bathroom. According to the autopsy report, his blood contained both alcohol and sleeping pills. His official cause of death was determined to be carbon monoxide poisoning. Investigators found that the gas leak originated from a water heater in his home, a heater that had been purchased and installed directly by Kwang Hui and his twin brother. At first, police ruled it as an accidental death. However, when insurance investigators began digging deeper, they uncovered several red flags. The bathroom had undergone unusual renovations, making it completely airtight. All ventilation openings had been sealed off, turning it into a virtual gas chamber. Most notably, before his death, Park had purchased multiple insurance policies worth 1.7 billion won. His monthly insurance premium was 1.58 million won. This raised a major red flag. Park's monthly income was less than 1 million won. Records showed that Park had previously attempted to buy a more affordable insurance plan with a 150,000 won monthly premium. However, he had to cancel it because he couldn't afford the payments. So, the biggest question remained. Why would someone who couldn't afford a 150,000 won premium suddenly commit to a policy that cost 1.58 million won per month? The most puzzling aspect of this case was that Park's insurance beneficiary was not a family member, but rather Junam, Kwang Hui's twin brother. Under normal circumstances, the primary beneficiary of a life insurance policy is typically a legal heir or a direct relative of the policyholder. However, Junam and Park had no blood relation whatsoever, yet somehow they were able to obtain legal authorization from Park's family. Additionally, according to insurance company records, before and after Park's death, they had received multiple phone calls from someone claiming to be Park. These calls inquired about insurance claim procedures and specific payout details in the event of accidental death. However, police strongly suspected that these calls were not made by Park himself, but were instead faked by the Kwang Hui brothers. Through an extensive investigation, police were able to piece together the entire sequence of events. In 2008, Kwang Hui met Park Byung-jun. Shortly after, he lured Park into a premeditated insurance scam. He convinced Park to purchase multiple high-value life insurance policies, promising to cover the premium payments himself. Initially, the beneficiaries of these policies were Park's family members. Later, Kwang Hui fabricated a debt, falsely claiming that Park owed a large sum of money. Using this fabricated debt, he pressured Park's family into signing a legal authorization, giving him control over the insurance policies. Within just a few months, Kwang Hui carefully transferred all beneficiary rights to his brother, Ju Nam. The night before the incident, Kwang Hui invited Park on a late-night fishing trip to a remote location. He deliberately kept Park fishing all night, ensuring that he got no rest. By 2 a.m., Park was exhausted and returned home, exactly as the Lee brothers had planned. Once inside, they led Park to the bathroom and gave him a beer laced with sleeping pills. As the drugs took effect, Park gradually lost consciousness. To make everything look like a simple accident, they neatly folded Park's clothes and placed them on a chair outside the bathroom, as if this was his usual habit. Then, they sealed the bathroom, tampered with the water heater's gas pipe, and carbon monoxide quickly filled the room, suffocating Park to death. In May 2013, the court ruled on Park's murder case. Kwang Hui's sentence was changed from 7 years to life in prison. Ju Nam was sentenced to 20 years. While investigating Park's case, police discovered a shocking connection. The insurance company where Kwang Hui purchased Park Byung-jun's policies was the same company where Myung-chul's fiancé Hyun-ju worked. In fact, Kwang Hui first met Hyun-ju through his frequent visits to purchase insurance from her. This raised major speculation. Was there ever a secret partnership between Kwang Hui and Hyun-ju? Did Hyun-ju have anything to do with Myung-chul's disappearance? Initially, police suspected her involvement but eventually ruled her out. The reason? When police first concluded that Myung-chul had intentionally disappeared, Hyun-ju refused to accept it. She persistently visited the police station every few days, begging them to reopen the investigation. In fact, her determination was even stronger than Myung-chul's own parents. Throughout the investigation, Hyun-ju cooperated fully with every request from law enforcement. Everyone around her also stated that her relationship with Myung-chul was genuinely deep and loving. Because of her actions, police ultimately removed her from the list of suspects. However, some people still questioned whether it could all have been an elaborate act. So, what dark secrets were hidden behind Myung-chul's disappearance? Was this a secret deal between Kwang Hui and Lee Hyun-ju? Or was this an elaborate trap Kwang Hui meticulously designed out of jealousy toward Myung-chul? Or could there be even deeper secrets buried beneath it all? Let me know your theories in the comments section. That's the end of today's case. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. See you in the next episode.